Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about a system of social control and a ideological view of social control that's being applied all over the Western world at the moment. It permeates the political system, the legal system, education, the public services, the whole thing. And it's well, I say toxic in the extreme, in my view, because it has to subvert the will of the people, it has to subvert the rule of law, it has to subvert due legal process, it has to have two-tier justice in order to implement it. So let's just have a little look at that. I think it's a huge thing, and I'd be disappointed if I only get a small number of viewers on this video. And if you do look at it, please share it, because it's something I think of huge importance. Now, many years ago, I went and had a look at a number of cases in the divorce courts. This is going into the actual courtroom, watching and observing the cases here. The reason being is I was losing so many of, I was at the time, I was a VP in this company of new product development. And so I needed a lot of, top-notch, top-flight engineers, software programmers, all that sort of stuff. And I was losing a lot of these guys to the divorce process, or the wider family law process. And they were coming back with these horror stories of how one-sided and one-eyed the courts were. How, if she said that he was an abuser, then that was it. That was fact. And he had to meet a very high burden of proof to disprove it, whereas she didn't need any proof to make it the claim. So for example, she could prevent him from seeing his own children, and so he would take the matter to court, and going through quite a long wait list to get there. So if she wants to take something to court, it happens in 5 minutes. If he wants to take it to court, he's on a 12-month waiting list. So he finally gets it to court, and she's, oh yeah, well, I only did it. I only stopped him from seeing it because he was abusing the children. That's it. Fact. It's fact. Now you have to prove that you didn't abuse. Now she's got no evidence of that claim. She's just made the claim. She hasn't said, well, and I've got 5 witnesses, and I've got this, and I've got that. The children have been interviewed by a psychologist who's made no mention of this. So where's this suddenly come from? She's in the witness box and potentially in a bit of trouble here, contempt of court, this, that, next thing. But all she has to do is use the magic word, he's a child abuser. That suddenly, no, she has no guilt at all. She's acted, she stopped the Nazi from doing bad things. So suddenly she's now a good person beyond reproach. So then the whole thing shifts. He has to prove that he didn't do it, even though there is no evidence against him. It's only an allegation. Now that shocked me, that when I first saw it, because I'd heard these guys saying things, and I was losing these guys. They were quitting and saying, hey, it's not worth my while working given the amount of money they're taking from me and this sort of thing. Another guy, who was a very sharp guy, very important for the operation, and he'd had some school, high school graduation party, when he was 8. He's now in his early 30s or something, had a party when he was 18, and some girls popped out and said, oh, well, I've got a kid here and he's the father. Next thing they're chasing him for 15 years of back child support and so on. And he's saying, look, my life's ruined. I can't work. If I work, they'll take pretty much every penny that I've got, so I'm not going to work anymore. Was his work in the black economy. So I was losing a lot of my key people, and because they were high income earners, they were particularly susceptible to, being ruined in divorce, and again, to the point it wasn't worth them making any money. So, which is utterly counterproductive, of course, to any society to have that sort of system in play. So I was amazed by this and half disbelieving it, really. I thought maybe they were just overstating it. So I took the time out myself to go into the divorce courts, sit and listen to these cases. And there's a public gallery, you can go there. I was typically the only only one person in the public gallery, which is me or maybe a relative or something, but typically that was it. So, and I saw it firsthand. I mean, I saw it as a member of the public. I witnessed it firsthand, how it was a predetermined victim group, the woman, a predetermined oppressor group, the man, and less so if it was brown or black people, but certainly if it was white guy. And the victim group could just make an allegation, no matter what they did, no matter how many crimes they committed, the woman committed and did. She said, "Oh, he abused me. Oh, he abused the children, he assaulted me, and he shouted at me, and these sorts of things, and again, things that you wouldn't think, well, I don't know, that doesn't seem like a big deal." Your response was way over, if that indeed was. Certainly that I saw and that I heard about in every single instance, she didn't have to bring any evidence to the table. An allegation was enough. He's a child abuser. He abused me. He assaulted me. When did he do that? Oh, I don't know. And I watched some of the cases where it was beyond absurd. And when did this abuse take place? Oh, I don't know. Months ago. Well, what was the abuse? Oh, I don't really remember. Did you have to go to the doctor or the hospital? I don't think so. And so on. That was the level of evidence. Zero evidence. But yet the court, which is very ideological, divorce court, it stuck doggedly to the ideology, which is victim, oppressor, whatever the victim said. But it was the issue of whatever the victim says, the ideologically determined victim, whatever the victim says is true. Whatever they've said is fact. And it needs to be disproven. But so men could go into court and tell them, I haven't seen my kids for 12 months because she keeps, and they, the man's got the, say a recording of her on an answering machine. No, I'm going to fucking make sure you never fucking see your fucking kids again. And then he goes to play it in court. It's evidence, and the judge won't allow it. Oh no, I'm not allowing that as evidence, but it's proof that she interfered with. No, I'm not going to allow it. Well, I've got 3 witnesses that and they've got sworn affidavits that said she just, no, I won't allow that. No, I'm not. And so the court systematically disallowed all the key evidence, factual evidence that would ensure that the ideological victim would be culpable and therefore would have to be charged. So in every instance, certainly that I saw and I'm aware of, the court effectively turned to the judge, and turned themselves inside out to prevent the victim group from ever being accountable or being culpable or liable, which was, of course, crazy. So now, why was this so? Well, it's the ideology of we have to. So in the case of gender relations, we must control men. Men must be controlled. However heavy-handed or vicious that is, men must be controlled. But when it's race, then it's white people. White people must be controlled. White people must be controlled. In the case of, say, gay, lesbian, then straight people must be controlled. So whoever is deemed as having the most social power must be not only controlled, but must be denied, basic legal rights and equality before the law and so on. All of that's gone on the basis of this is how we do social control. So if white people are against mass migration, the brown, black people are the ideological social victims, we must control the white people. So you wonder why is it that white people receive such heavy-handed sentences for the same crime? Why do men get much more serious sentences for the same crime as women do? So if the woman kills the husband, then it's maybe 3 or 4 years in prison because she was oppressed. But if he kills the wife, then it's 20 years in prison, 18 years non-parole. And so, so there's a big difference there, huge difference for the exact same crime, the penalties given to women and given to men. The gender issue here. Now, on the basis of race, there's a recent case in Britain where I don't think he was British, I think he might have been Polish, but a young white man was stabbed. He was stabbed to death, stabbed a number of times, and died shortly thereafter. But when the police arrived, the black guy, the brown guy, said, he said a racist word. Oh, well, that's it. Forget about it. And they actually arrested the white guy. The guy who'd been stabbed was arrested because it was said that well, what evidence do you have that he made a racist? Well, none. I'm just saying it. I'm just alleging it, just claiming it. But purely on the claim of the black guy, the brown guy, purely on that claim, the police acted on that claim, even though there's the stabbed guy with the stab wounds, the other guy with the knife. That's a clear and absolute crime, no question. But they arrest the guy who allegedly made a racist comment, and do not arrest the guy who clearly did, with evidence, stab the white dude. So that seems astonishing, but no, it's not when you look at the overall framing of the social control structures. We must keep white people under control. We must keep white men, Nazis, fascists, swastika, Nazi. And this is the sort of the paradigm and the structure of social control. Whoever has ideologically the most social power must be controlled. Now, people with the most social power tend to have the bigger stakes in the society, the more skin in the game. They tend to have, closer ties with the existing social structure, and thus are more likely to be well behaved. Whereas those who have less connection to the social structure, the mass immigrants, for example, are more likely to be quite poorly behaved by contrast. Now, here's the same sort of thing where a black guy rapes a white woman and does so violently, and he's caught dead to rights. I mean, there's no there's no ambiguity about the case, and he gets, again, quite a short sentence, I think 18 months in prison for doing that. Now, a white guy, and I'd question the white guy's mental sort of state, but the white guy got, again, 20 plus years for doing the same thing with less violence. Now, why is that so? Why aren't they both getting 20 years? Why aren't they both getting just 18 months? Why is one treated very different from the other? Why is the black person able to stab the white person and say, it's because he called me a racist, and that's considered a reason or an excuse? I mean, that's staggering in terms of jurisprudence and due legal process, the rule of law, the application of law, accountability before the law. But that's not the issue of the law. Once mass migration and these sorts of things, or even the gender conflict wars began, then the justification is, well, she's oppressed, she's a victim, he's an oppressor, and if he gets treated badly, he had it coming to him. He's an oppressor. Remember what it was like, before and all these sort of things. Now, there was torrents of propaganda. I remember torrents of propaganda at the time about how women were being oppressed and beaten, and children were being, 50% of all men are abusing their daughters, and 90% of all men are murderers, and this and that. And of course, it was absolute lies. But as a propaganda barrage, it was, a sustained propaganda campaign, which was everywhere. Then it got traction, and it's, if he's not allowed, if she said he was an abuser, then maybe he was. That's not the issue, whether he was or was. What evidence do you have that he was? You've made this claim. You've broken the law, Mrs. Smith. You've broken the law. We've got you dead to rights on that. But you're claiming that he's a child abuser. What evidence do you have? Do you have any evidence? Any witnesses? What do you have? No, but that doesn't matter. You put that aside because she's in ideological power terms, a victim. Therefore, she gets not only a free pass from the crime she commits, but she can actually counterclaim and say that he committed crimes and not even have to provide evidence. And this is the case with, and the police are dealing with it this way. Now, I've watched the thing play out just recently where an Asian woman, quite a large Asian woman, and they weren't that far from me, but and I speak Mandarin Chinese, so I could follow what was going on here. this woman, and I think she was in that case, by the way, was in a group of Asian people, and they were talking Chinese, and she was standing nearby, and someone else came by and said something in Chinese. Well, I could hear what they said. They said, "Yeah, how are you today?" in Chinese, and this crazy woman standing nearby. I'm not Chinese. How dare you talk to me in Chinese? How dare you say it? And she chased after this man, and he had like a coffee or something in his hand. She knocked it out of his hand and tried to. He had like a bag he was carrying with stuff. She tried to take the bag from his push, screaming at him, "You're a racist! You're a racist! You've been racist to me!" Screaming at him. I mean, she was a nutcase, and she was assaulting him. You know, clearly there's like a million witnesses everywhere for this, and the police were called. So I thought, I want to hang around for this, and I want to see what's going on. So I was watching this now. The police said, "Well, we've got it on tape. We've got it on surveillance. You're assaulting this guy. That's it. It's a done deal here." But then she mentioned the magic words to the police. "Oh yeah, but he was racist to me." And then suddenly the police just completely lost interest in her, as if she didn't exist anymore. They've already, we've got you dead to rights. You've assaulted this man. Suddenly they just lost all interest in her and turned to this guy. "Yeah, what racist? Yeah, what did you say? What, you Hitler or something?" And that was and suddenly they're really coming in hard on him. And he said, "Hey, hold on a minute. She assaulted me, if you don't mind. Don't care. You said something right. Well, where's the witnesses for that?" So the guy quite reasonably stood his ground, and he'd been older. I don't know. He'd be probably pushing 50, I guess. But he stood his ground. No. Have you got you've got clear evidence that she assaulted me. What evidence do you have that I said something racist or did something right? Well, she said so. Well, that's not evidence. That's an allegation. What evidence other than that allegation do you have? Now, this Asian woman was clearly a nutcase, so the police, for some reason, couldn't. But the police have been trained to consider crimes like on a totem pole of severity, that being, I don't know, homophobic or being racist or those are the great. You can murder someone, who cares? And if the person was white, they're probably a Nazi anyway. So now my sort of the way this is heading is that how long will it be? And I think we're close to being there already. How long will it be before it will be more or less acceptable to kill white people, if you're a brown or black person, to kill white people on the basis you can say, well, they're a Nazi, they said something racist. Because if they're racist, that means they're a fascist. If they're a fascist, it means they're a Nazi. If they're a Nazi, it means they're Hitler. And of course you'd kill Hitler. So therefore, when you kill any white person, you're really killing Hitler. That's kind of how it works. And I think we're about there already. And now, when I first saw this in the divorce courts, this idea you can just make an allegation, oh, he's a child abuser, he assaulted me, and there's no evidence required. Make the allegation if you want, and maybe it's true, but it must be tested to a certain burden of proof, and both sides equally must meet that same level and that burden of proof. So if he says, well, she abused the kids, then she has to then meet that same burden of proof that he has to meet when he's accused of something. But it only goes one way. She can make an allegation that becomes fact, and he has to meet a very high burden of, way higher than anything she has to meet, a higher burden of proof to refute it. Then when I saw this and realized it was a model and a legal structural model that was being used in the divorce courts, I went to see a politician of some significance and importance, and pretty senior in the federal government, and he pointed this out to me. He said, "Look, this is at the moment, this is in the divorce courts, but if this model of doing business, legal business, goes into other courts, it'll corrupt everything. The whole legal edifice will lose its credibility if this gets out. You need to jump on this now." And he sort of, yeah, well, maybe, it's just confined to some radical feminists and the angry lesbians in the divorce courts. Who cares? It won't go any further. I don't know. I think if you look at the amount of lawyers and social workers, psychologists, judges, legal practitioners that are happily going along with this. No, it's not just something that's confined there. This will spread, and I was confident that it would. And he was, no, you got nothing to worry about. No, that's fine. Who cares anyway? And this sort of stuff. And this was 25 plus, getting on for 30 years ago that I had that conversation with that politician. And of course, it has now spread to all courts and areas of jurisprudence all across the Western world. And it's directed to, again, control white people, control men. Only they must be controlled, not the others. Only they must be controlled. And in that sense, it's a travesty of the first magnitude. You've been with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for listening.